Hey foodies, welcome to the channel. I want to make your Christmas a better one. So today I'm going to teach you how to make a legendary Jamaican Christmas cake. The recipe will be in the description. I want you guys to follow it. Remember to subscribe to the channel. I'm Alex the Feel Good Chef. Now let's get straight into the video. We're going to cream 2 cups of sugar with 1 pound of butter. And feel free to use brown sugar instead of the white sugar. I'm only using the white sugar because that's what I have available. So I'm going to let this cream for about 15 minutes. Alright, to make the fruits, we're going to boil a half a pound of raisin, a half a pound of prune, 2 cups of white sugar, cup of white rum, white red navy rum. And the reason why we're boiling the fruits is because we didn't soak it. So this is a way to bypass the soaking process. This is a lot easier, so we're just going to boil this. I'm using 1 cup of water. We're going to boil this for about 5 to 10 minutes. Alright, now that we have the mixture nice and creamy, we're going to be breaking the eggs, and we're going to add the eggs to the cream, butter and sugar. Alright, so we have 12 eggs, so we're going to break them in a separate container and then we add it to the large mixture, just in case one of the eggs spoil. Alright, so we now have the 12 eggs. We're going to whisk these out. Alright, so now that the whisking is complete, we are going to pour the egg mixture into the cream, fat and butter, but we're not going to be pouring everything at once. We're going to be adding it bit by bit. Alright, so we have the fruits ready. We're going to let this cool and then we'll blend it out. Alright, so now that the egg mixture gets to this stage, we're going to add some rum. And this is about half cup of white rare navy rum. So I'm now going to add 1 tablespoon almond extract, 1 tablespoon vanilla. Then I'm going to add 6 tablespoons of food coloring or browning. And depending on the type of browning you have, you can use whatever amount you feel comfortable with, because sometimes the browning is a little bit darker than normal. So you just want to eyeball it to make sure that it's not too dark or it's not too light. So we're starting off with 6 right now. We might later on adjust it. We're going to let this continue to store for about another 2 minutes. Then we're going to transfer it to the bowl. If you could only smell how rich this smells, how good it smells, you would understand why fruit cake is the best cake in the entire world. Alright, so now we're going to be working on the dry ingredients. We're going to be sieving out 6 cups of all-purpose flour. Adding 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon cinnamon. We're also adding a teaspoon of table salt. And we're also using 1 nutmeg. So the reason why we're sieving this out is so that we can incorporate more air into the mixture, make it a little bit more light and fluffy, and so that these lumps don't end up in the final cake product. Because that's kind of embarrassing to be eating cake and finding lumps. And as I said before, we're using 1 nutmeg. So we have all of the dry ingredients ready. We're going to sieve this together, combine everything. In a separate bowl, we're going to be incorporating the wet ingredients. So we have all our dry ingredients. So you see how this light, nice and fluffy. Now let's work on the wet. All right, so now we're going to be blending the fruits. We're going to be adding some port wine so that it's a little bit easier to blend. And you don't want to blend this too smooth. You still want to have it a little bit chunky. Now we have the fruits that has been boiled. We add the port wine, so we're going to blend this. All right, so the fruits is finished. All right, so these are the blended fruits look like. We have some blend and we have some whole. That's all right. We're going to add this to the cake. This is going to add some more texture. All right, so we're going to pour our wet ingredients into our mixing bowl. It's because the mixing bowl that we have is not big enough. We have to transfer it. So we're now adding in the fruits. And remember, the more fruits we add, the more dense the cake will be, the thicker, the richer the cake will be. And the fruit cake, it can last for years. All you have to do is that every month you just add some white rum to the mixture or onto the cake. And it's going to be preserved. You can keep it for 10 years. Alright, so we now have our wet ingredients butter. We're going to be adding in our flour, but we're not going to be adding in everything at once. We're going to be adding in some, folding it in, and then when that is complete, we're going to add in our red wine. And we're using port wine. If you don't have port wine, you can always use red label wine or fruit wine. Oh my God, if you could only smell this. This smells really great. I remember when I was a child growing up and I used to make this with my grandmother. I used to taste the butter. My job was to lick the butter out of the pan when it's finished. This smells so good, it's extremely rich and it's so easy to make. It looks very daunting at first, but it's very easy to make. You can smell the vanilla, you can smell the nutmeg, the cinnamon, the almond extract. You can smell the rare Neville white overproof rub. Remember, you don't want the cake to be too dense. So now we're going to be adding in our red wine. Make sure you're pouring attention, guys, because this is very important. This is for Christmas. This is for family. We have just added 2 cups of the port wine. You don't want to miss anything. If you miss anything, you can always pause the video, write down the recipe, or you can follow on screen. This is not one of those videos where I'm rushing. This is a very important video because guess what? You're going to make this for your family. You can even make it now and save it for Christmas. You can make this any time of the year and it will still be ready for Christmas. Because as I said, the fruit cake, it can last up to 10 years as long as you continually add the wine to it or the rum. Alright, it's coming together now. It looks really good. We're going to add 2 more cups of the rum, of the red wine to this. Alright, so you see at this stage now, this should be good. We're going to mix this out. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be greasing my pan. I'm going to be greasing my non-stick baking pan, and then I'm going to be pouring in my mixture. I'm going to be baking this cake at 365 degrees Fahrenheit until the inside is done, or for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I'm going to, when the cake is finished, when it's hot, I'm going to take it from the oven and then I'm going to be pouring on my port wine. Alright, foodies, the butter looks good, the butter looks rich. You can smell this. If you grew up in the countryside in the Caribbean, you're used to cake like this. If you grew up in Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, that's where you grew up, you're going to be used. You're going to use the cake like this one. Then you want to taste it to make sure that it's good. Look at the batter. You see how thick it is? Not telling you any lie. This can eat without being baked. You can literally eat this without baking it. It's really good. Very rich. Look on the butter. If me I lie to you, I'll delete my channel. If you make this video, if you make this recipe and it don't come out good, and you comment and say it doesn't come out good, I'll delete my channel. If not, and you bake it and it tastes good, you have to subscribe to the channel. That's a deal. Alright, let's pour this up. So you're going to use a piece of paper with some melted butter and grease the entirety of the cake. You can also line this with grease paper, but we're not going to be doing that today. We're just going to be greasing it. And you can dust some flour into it. That also helps it to come out easy. So the grease in our cake pan, this is what we have going. So now we're going to pour in our batter. Alright, so don't worry about the size of the pan that I'm using. This amount of butter should be enough to make 2 large.